Welcome to today's devotional message from Trusting God Always. You prayed, you fasted, you waited, and still, silence. Maybe this message is the sign you didn't know you needed. You sit by the window, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the room. Outside, life moves on. Cars drive by, children laugh. The world continues its rhythm, a symphony of forward movement. But inside you, there's a stillness, a heavy silence that feels more like an absence. It's a different kind of quiet than peace. It's the quiet of a paused life, a suspended reality. You've been waiting for a door to open, a word to come, a change to arrive that feels overdue, perhaps even denied. You've sent up prayers like flares into the night sky, pleaded with a raw intensity, perhaps even bargained in the quiet of the night, searching for a sign, any sign, that your petitions have reached a listening ear. You've scrolled through social media, a digital wilderness, watching others' breakthroughs unfold like blooming flowers, their prayers answered seemingly overnight, their mountains moved, while your own situation remains stubbornly unchanged, a stone refusing to budge, locked in a frustrating, painful pause. Maybe it's a health crisis that lingers like a stubborn cloud, refusing to lift, or a financial burden that presses down, a weight refusing to dissipate. Perhaps a relational rift that feels like a canyon, deep and seemingly irreparable. Or maybe a deep, personal longing, a quiet ache in your soul that feels not just unanswered, but forgotten by heaven itself. You trace the condensation on the glass, the lines mirroring the furrows on your brow, the questions etched not just on your face, but into the very foundation of your soul. Does God still hear? Does He see? Does He care about this small corner of the world where you feel stuck, unseen and unheard, like a forgotten plant in a vast garden? The silence isn't just the absence of sound. It's the apparent absence of divine action, a perceived void where intervention should be. It's profoundly easy to feel forgotten, like a prayer request lost in the vast cosmos, or a forgotten appointment in the divine schedule, left unread by the one who holds the universe. The weight of unanswered questions presses down, threatening to extinguish the fragile flame of hope you still cling to. The tiny mustard seed of faith, fighting for light. This isn't just surface-level impatience. It's a soul-deep ache, a test of the very foundation of your faith, a walk through a valley that seems to stretch endlessly. But in this quiet, heavy space, a truth begins to stir. A whisper beneath the noise of doubt, like a gentle wind rustling through dry leaves. God is not absent. He is not passive, watching from a distance. He is intricately involved, even in the stillness you feel. And this waiting, this difficult, stretching, sometimes agonizing wait, is not a sign of His neglect, but potentially a key part of His profound, perfect plan for you. It's a season in the wilderness, perhaps, but He walked the wilderness too. It feels like delay, but perhaps it is divine timing unfolding in ways you cannot yet perceive. The strength you feel you lack to keep waiting is not what He requires. He asks for surrender. The silence that feels like emptiness is often pregnant with His unseen work. If you are feeling forgotten in the waiting, this message is for you. If you are questioning God's timing, searching for the hand that seems hidden, This message is for you. If you are weary from carrying the weight of what hasn't changed, lift your eyes. The light is not gone. There is hope in the waiting, a resilience forged in the quiet, and His presence is closer than the silence suggests. He is the author, and your story is still being written, even in the chapters that feel blank. If these words meet you right where you are, like, share, and subscribe them if you haven't already. And subscribe. It helps us reach more souls who need God's comfort. Comment below with your favorite Bible promise or the one you're still holding on to in the waiting. Let's begin, and let His Word breathe new life into yours. You live by clocks and calendars. You set deadlines, make plans, expect progress within predictable timelines. You bring your neatly packaged expectations to God's throne room, offering up your prayer, your hope, your desperate longing. You submitted that application months ago, expecting a swift reply, scanning the horizon of your inbox, refreshing the screen like a parched soul searching for water in the wilderness. You prayed for healing weeks ago, expecting immediate relief, tracing the lines of doubt on your palm as days turn into weeks, and the mountain of sickness still stands before you. You poured out your heart about that relationship years ago, expecting reconciliation or resolution by now, watching seasons change outside your window while the internal winter persists. But the clock keeps ticking, and the expected outcome remains elusive. This mismatch between your timeline and His can feel like a cruel joke, a cosmic delay designed to test your patience to its breaking point. The anxiety builds with every passing day that looks identical to the last, like sand slipping through your fingers, each grain a question. Did I miss something? Was my faith not enough? Is God deliberately withholding, or has He simply forgotten? You feel the weight of that question pressing down, wondering if your oil lamp is running out of fuel while you wait for the bridegroom. The spiritual insight here is profound, a quiet truth that shifts the very ground beneath your feet. God's timing is rarely our timing. Not because He delights in making us wait, but because His purposes are often far grander and deeper than our immediate comfort or convenience. His delays are strategic, divine pauses woven into the fabric of your story, designed not to frustrate you, but to prepare you, to build something in you or around you that couldn't exist any other way. Sometimes, God's greatest movements happen in your deepest stillness. He's not asking for speed, but for surrender to His rhythm. Don't measure God's faithfulness by the speed of His response, as if He were a vending machine dispensing answers on demand. Measure it by the certainty of His character and the unwavering nature of the promises found in His Word. His goodness is not tied to your immediate outcome. It is etched into the very essence of His being. Hebrews 10:36 whispers through the waiting, "You need to persevere so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what He has promised." Waiting is not just passive endurance. It is active perseverance in faith. A quiet act of rebellion against the urge to rush or despair. Reflect for a moment. Where is your timeline causing you the most stress right now? Can you pause just for a breath and acknowledge that God sees a bigger picture than you do, a canvas far vaster than your immediate concerns? Can you hold on to the fragile yet powerful hope that His plan, though unseen in the fog of delay, is actively unfolding even in this stillness? He is working, even when you cannot trace his hand. Trust the unseen weaver of your life's tapestry. You picture Abraham, perhaps sitting by his tent fire under a vast, silent sky filled with stars. The very stars God told him to count, saying his descendants would be like them. A painful reminder of a promise that seemed increasingly impossible. This wasn't a short wait, it was a lifetime. Imagine the quiet ache as the years bled into decades. He'd packed up his entire world, left the familiar comfort of home, stepping out into the desolate unknown, guided only by a voice and a promise. He journeyed, settled in a land promised to his future family, a land already teeming with other people, a constant visual contradiction to the divine decree, and the most aching promise of all, a son, an heir, the very foundation of the great nation God swore would spring from him. Year after year, the cradle remained empty. Abraham and Sarah grew old. Not just a little old, but way past the point of any natural hope for childbirth. The biological clock didn't just tick. It had stopped entirely, frozen in the desert sands of impossibility. You feel that weight, that crushing disappointment when what God promised seems physically, undeniably, utterly out of reach. Maybe you've stood under your own silent sky, looking at your circumstances, an empty space, a closed door, a broken dream, wondering if God forgot, wondering if the promise was meant for someone else, or perhaps never meant at all. The spiritual insight hammered into Abraham's soul and ours is that God's promises often demand a faith that stretches far beyond human logic, comfortable timelines, and visible evidence. Abraham's faith wasn't perfect, of course. There was Hagar, a human attempt to fulfill a divine promise, a painful detour born of doubt and weariness. But the narrative arc of his life shows a constant, often staggering, return to trust the promiser himself. His long, arduous wait forged a deep foundation of radical dependence on God alone. It was in his utter weakness, when all natural possibility was gone, that God's power would finally be revealed. Are you looking at your circumstances today? Perhaps a longing in your heart, or a need in your life, and thinking, it's impossible now. Like Abraham, can you choose to believe that God specializes in the impossible? That his power is revealed most gloriously, not when you are strong and capable, but precisely when human strength fails. Romans 4:18 tells us Abraham, against all hope, in hope believed. This is the beautiful paradox of faith. Finding hope, not because your situation looks hopeful, but because the one who promised is hope itself. Your hope in the waiting is not based on what you see or what you can do, but on the unshakable character, the boundless power, and the perfect timing of the one who made the promise. He asks you to trust the author, even when you can't see the final chapter. He sits huddled in the dust, the rough stones cold against his back. The dream, once so vivid, so full of promise, feels like a cruel mirage now. Just days ago, he wore a coat of many colors, the favored sun, light glinting off its vibrant threads. Now he is cloaked in despair, the darkness of the pit swallowing even the memory of sunshine. The betrayal stings sharper than any whip. Brothers, his own blood, cast him aside, sold him into a life he never imagined. You can almost hear the ragged cries echoing in the silence, unheard, ignored, as they dragged him away, bound for a land of strangers, a destiny etched in chains. It is the shock of it, the utter gut-wrenching feeling of abandonment. How could God allow this? Where was the divine favor now? His journey winds through the scorching sands of slavery, landing him in the house of Potiphar. A flicker of hope ignites. He prospers, finds favor, manages the household with skill. Perhaps, just perhaps, this is the path to the dreams after all. A detour leading back to purpose. But hope, it seems, is a fragile thing in this foreign land. False accusation strikes like lightning from a clear sky, tearing down everything he built. From the heights of trust to the depths of a dungeon, unjustly confined. Years stretch out like an endless desert. Days blur into weeks, weeks into months, then years. The prison walls are his constant companions, the air thick with the stench of forgotten lives. He interprets dreams, offers help, a lifeline thrown to a man who promises to remember. But the cupbearer is gone, restored to his place, and Joseph remains. Picture him there, day after agonizing day, the weight of unfairness pressing down. The dreams God had given him, the visions of bowing sheaves and shining stars, must have felt like cruel taunts now, whispered mockeries in the echoing silence of his cell. This isn't just waiting for something better. This is suffering in the waiting. It is enduring injustice, hardship, and profound loneliness with no horizon in sight, no clear end to the confinement. Yet within those walls, a truth was being forged in the furnace of affliction. The spiritual insight from Joseph's long, arduous journey is profound, a truth whispered not just through the bars of a prison cell, but into the quiet corners of our own waiting seasons. God is with us, not just in the palace, not just when the dreams are unfolding easily, but in the pit and in the prison. The waiting isn't empty time, a void where God is absent. It is often, perhaps even always, a period of intense preparation, of crucial shaping, and of divine protection, even when it feels exactly like punishment or utter neglect. Joseph wasn't just serving time. He was being refined like precious metal. In the pit, he learned humility and reliance. In slavery, he learned faithful service and administration under duress. In prison, he learned patience, leadership, and the profound truth that even when men forget, God remembers. He was learning wisdom, discernment, and an unshakable reliance on God in the absolute darkest places. This painful, unfair season was not a delay. It was the necessary, agonizing preparation for the immense responsibility he would one day carry. The responsibility of saving not just his own family, but entire nations from famine. The character forged in the crucible of his suffering was the character needed to stand before Pharaoh, to govern Egypt, to forgive those who had wronged him so deeply. Are you in a pit or a prison of waiting right now? Perhaps it's a job that feels like a cage, a relationship season that is painfully confining, a financial hardship that limits your every move, or a place of physical or emotional confinement you absolutely did not choose. It feels unfair. It feels forgotten. The dreams God once whispered feel distant, maybe even impossible now. Remember Joseph. Remember that God hasn't abandoned you there. The very place that feels like a setback could be the setting for your greatest shaping. Like Joseph, even in the most unjust, most unfair circumstances, God is relentlessly at work, weaving your story into his larger, more glorious tapestry. Genesis 39:21 offers a simple, powerful truth about those dark years. But the Lord was with Joseph, and extended kindness to him, and gave him favor in the sight of the chief jailer. Even in the prison, God was with him. Even in the waiting, God extended kindness. Even in confinement, God brought favor. Your current confinement, whatever form it takes, the frustrating delay, the unexpected setback, the season of hiddenness, might just be God's classroom. It might be His refining fire, burning away what is not needed, strengthening what is essential. What character is He building in you right now? What lessons in patience, in reliance, in forgiveness, in quiet strength are being etched into your soul that you will absolutely need for where He is taking you? Trust that the author knows the end of the story, even when your current chapter feels impossibly dark. Israel's wilderness wandering. You remember the story, don't you? The dust settling on the shores of the Red Sea, the waves parting, a nation walking on dry ground, then erupting in songs of freedom. Egypt was behind them, the promised land shimmering like a mirage of hope ahead. A journey that, by all accounts, should have taken just weeks, perhaps a few months at most, stretched into 40 long years. 40 years. Imagine the initial exhilaration slowly draining away, replaced by the grinding monotony of the desert. Day after day, the same endless horizon meeting the same sandy earth, the same manna appearing like clockwork, sustaining but never exciting, the same faces, the same arguments, the same relentless sun. The hope of a swift arrival faded, replaced by a simmering frustration that boiled over into bitter complaints and open rebellion. They found themselves looking back, longing for the perceived comforts of Egypt, even if it meant the chains of slavery. They were stuck, circling the same terrain, not because God had lost His way or forgotten His promise, but because their hearts weren't ready for the land flowing with milk and honey. They had been led out of Egypt, yes, but Egypt, with its fear, its patterns of dependency, and its idols, hadn't been fully rooted out of them. This prolonged waiting, this 40-year wander in the wilderness, wasn't a detour. It was a necessary school for deep heart transformation. The relentless desert exposed their fear, their startling lack of trust in the God who had just parted a sea, and their default tendency to complain rather than lean on the divine hand guiding them. It was a place where an entire generation, whose hearts clung to the past and buckled under pressure, had to pass away before a new generation, forged independence and learning to trust, could step into the promise. Are you feeling like you're just circling in your own wilderness, repeating the same patterns, facing the same obstacles, seeing the same unchanging view day after day? Perhaps God isn't just waiting for you to get it right or hurry up. He is faithfully walking with you through this season, using the desert to reveal the hidden idols, the deeply buried fears, and the areas of unbelief that need to be surrendered before you can truly step into the fullness of His plan for you. Deuteronomy 8:2 holds the key. Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years, to humble and test you in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep His commands. Your wilderness is not a punishment. It's a profound revelation of your heart. Allow God to do His refining work there, trusting His presence in the sand, and knowing that even in the circling, He is leading you closer to who He created you to be, and ultimately to the promised land He has for you. You're waiting, not actively striving, not battling storms, just waiting. It feels like the world spins on, but you're stuck, motionless, in a quiet corner of time. The silence stretches, sometimes heavy, sometimes just numbingly present. You sit with unanswered prayers, with stalled plans, with a future that refuses to reveal itself. It's the stillness that follows the spinning, the pause after the pressure, the moments on the wheel where the potter's hands lift away and the clay just sits, seemingly abandoned. You feel unseen, untouched, covered by a cloth of uncertainty, wondering if the master craftsman has forgotten this piece entirely. Has the work stopped? Did he turn his attention elsewhere? This quiet feels less like peace and more like neglect. But the ancient wisdom whispers through the quiet. You are clay, and He is the potter. In Isaiah 64:8, the truth stands firm. Yet you, Lord, are our Father. We are the clay. You are the potter. We are all the work of your hand. The image isn't just about initial shaping. It's about the entire process. And within that divine process, there are moments of stillness. The clay, freshly molded, cannot immediately face the heat of the kiln or receive the vibrant glaze. It needs time to hold the shape, to solidify, to dry just enough. The silence isn't inaction. It's the foundational work happening beneath the surface, in the very structure of the clay. It is in this apparent pause that resilience is built into the walls, that the base strengthens, that the form you've been given begins to set. Perhaps the deepest work God does in us happens not in the dramatic moments of transformation, but in the quiet endurance of the waiting. It's in the stillness that He solidifies the lessons learned, integrates the changes He's already made, and prepares you for the next stage that you cannot yet see. He is strengthening your spiritual walls, drying you for the heat of future trials, preparing you to hold the beauty of the glaze He will one day apply. This waiting isn't a sign of abandonment. It is a crucial, purposeful part of being shaped by the hands of love. You might feel like nothing is happening, but your soul is being annealed in the quiet fire of trust. Trust that the potter's hands are always near, even when you don't feel them actively molding. This period of apparent stillness is not wasted time. It is sacred space where your spiritual form is being quietly, powerfully set. Allow yourself to be shaped in the waiting, trusting the masterful hands guiding your life, even when they are momentarily still. You sit in the silence, the air thick with waiting. Days blur into weeks, perhaps months, maybe even years. You prayed. You acted in faith. You made space for change, for breakthrough, for something, anything, to shift. But look around. Where is the visible growth? Where is the proof that your effort, your faith, your very being isn't just stagnant? It feels like being buried alive, lost in obscurity, hidden from the sun, with no sign that anything you're doing or anything God is doing in you is making any difference at all. The ache of invisibility is real. The frustration of seeing others bloom while you remain stubbornly beneath the surface can whisper cruel doubts. Did God forget? Is this waiting a punishment? Am I even still alive, spiritually speaking? Think about a seed planted in the ground. You bury it in darkness, entrust it to the earth, add water, and then you wait and wait. For a long time, you see nothing, absolute nothing. The surface remains unbroken, silent, still. From the perspective above ground, there is no progress, no life, no evidence that anything significant is happening. You might dig it up, anxious, wondering if it's even doing anything, if it's alive, if it's rotting away forgotten in the cold soil. But beneath that still surface, in the rich, dark earth, a miracle is quietly unfolding. Tiny roots are reaching out with fierce determination. They anchor the seed, drawing in essential nutrients, establishing the unseen foundational network necessary for the mighty plant or tree that will eventually push through the earth with unstoppable force. The most crucial, life-sustaining, enduring work happens in the hidden, dark places, far from the light and the hurried gaze of the world. The waiting you experience above ground is not empty time. It is utterly essential for the vital growth happening below. You, in this season of waiting, in this feeling of being buried, are like that seed in the dark. The waiting period you're enduring might feel exactly like being buried, forgotten, lost in obscurity, seeing no visible progress, no green shoots breaking through the soil of your life. The outward appearance is one of stillness, maybe even stagnation. But the profound spiritual truth, the divine insight God offers, is that He is most often using this hidden time, this season of apparent darkness and inactivity, to build your spiritual roots deep into the soil of His truth, His promises, and His unchanging character. This is not wasted time. It is foundational time. This unseen work strengthens your spiritual foundation, increases your capacity to draw life directly from Him, and prepares you to stand firm and unshakable when the inevitable storms of life eventually come raging. Without these deep roots, any visible growth you achieve would be fragile, shallow, and easily toppled by the first strong wind. The very darkness you might fear is the medium in which your greatest strength is being forged. Are you weary of being in the dark place of waiting, seeing no outward sign of growth, no visible return on your investment of faith and prayer? Trust this sacred, hidden process. Trust that God is building something essential beneath the surface of your life, something far more important than immediate visibility or superficial success. The Bible encourages this deep truth in Colossians 2:7, urging us, "Let your roots grow down into Him, and let your lives be built on Him. Then your faith will flourish and you will overflow with thankfulness." It doesn't say let your branches grow tall instantly or let your flowers burst forth immediately. It specifically highlights the roots. Let them grow down into Him. He is the fertile ground, the source of everything you need. This season might feel like an ending, like being buried, but it is precisely the beginning of a deeper, more resilient life in Him. Embrace the hidden season. It is not a season of punishment or forgetfulness, but a season where your strength is being forged in the sacred darkness, preparing you to bear fruit that lasts. Trusting God always means trusting Him even, and especially when you cannot see the growth, when you scroll through your feed again. The blue light, a cool, distant glow in the late-night quiet. And there it is, another photo, another announcement. A friend celebrating a promotion you were hoping for. A cousin posting a picture of a positive pregnancy test, the kind you've been praying over for years. Someone else bought the house, got the degree, found the love, received the healing you are still desperately waiting for. A familiar, sharp ache settles deep in your chest. It's more than just disappointment. It's the sting of comparison, a bitter taste you've come to know too well. Their timeline seems so much faster, smoother, bursting with blessings that look remarkably like the ones you've earnestly, faithfully pleaded for. And doubt, that insidious whisperer, slithers into the quiet spaces of your mind. What's wrong with my faith? Am I not praying hard enough? Is God even listening? Why does He seem to favor them? You feel left behind, overlooked, like a forgotten contestant in a race where everyone else is crossing the finish line, waving trophies while you're still somewhere back in the wilderness, wondering if you even know the way. This isn't merely garden variety envy. It's a deep, unsettling spiritual struggle that attacks the very core of your worth and casts a shadow of doubt over God's inherent goodness towards you. It's the lie that says God's finite blessings are somehow being distributed, and you're simply low on the list. But the profound spiritual insight waiting in the quiet is this: comparing your journey to someone else's is the most cunning thief of joy and the most persistent distorter of God's beautiful, multifaceted truth. God doesn't operate on a one-size-fits-all plan. He has a unique path, a specific timeline, and a custom-designed narrative woven just for you. Their blessing, as real and wonderful as it is not a sign of your deprivation. Your waiting season, as long and painful as it feels, is not a mark of His displeasure or proof of inadequate faith, just as their breakthrough isn't necessarily a sign of their superior righteousness or devotion. Each story is different. Each chapter, including the quiet, waiting ones, serves a distinct, holy purpose in God's individual epic being written for your life. Maybe the wilderness isn't a punishment, but a quiet forge shaping resilience you didn't know you needed. Perhaps the delay is not denial, but divine preparation for something you can't yet see. Are you caught in this comparison trap, allowing the highlight reels of others' timelines to diminish your trust in God's intricate, perfect plan for you? The invitation isn't to ignore others' blessings, but to gently, firmly redirect your gaze. Pull your focus from their lane back to your own. More importantly, lift your eyes to the one walking faithfully with you, step by sometimes painful step, in your specific lane. The Apostle Paul knew this struggle. He urged in Galatians 6:4, each one should test their own actions. Then they can take pride in themselves alone, without comparing themselves to someone else. Focus on faithfully walking the path God has laid directly before you. Trust that His timing for your unique breakthrough is not just good, but utterly perfect. The days stretch into weeks, into months, and the silence holds firm. The initial spark that ignited your hope, that whispered, God is working, begins to flicker like a lamp running low on oil. Doubt, that persistent shadow, starts to stretch and loom larger in the quiet corners of your mind. You find yourself having those internal conversations, the ones you might not even whisper out loud. Is this even going to happen? Did I completely misunderstand God? Is He even listening anymore? Is He still good in this waiting? This waiting period, this prolonged silence, feels like fertile ground for doubt. because it challenges everything comfortable about our faith. It forces us to confront our limited human understanding and exposes just how much we rely on tangible evidence, on seeing and feeling God's movement right now. You might feel your grip on faith loosening, your fingers slipping, questioning everything you once believed about God's promises or His active, loving involvement in your life. This feeling, this wrestling, isn't a sign of failure. It's a common battle fought in the trenches of faith, a wilderness experience almost every soul encounters. Even the most devout, the spiritual giants whose stories inspire us, wrestled fiercely with doubt in seasons of prolonged waiting or intense suffering. The profound spiritual insight here, often hidden in the struggle, is that wrestling with doubt is not the opposite of faith. In fact, it's often a necessary step towards a deeper, more resilient, and infinitely more authentic faith. It forces you beyond the easy answers and comfortable feelings. It compels you to examine why you believe, not just what you believe. It drives you, or perhaps gently guides you, to dig deeper into the unchanging truth of God's Word and the steadfast character of God Himself, rather than relying solely on your fleeting feelings or the shifting circumstances visible before your eyes. A faith that hasn't been tested in the fire, that hasn't walked through the valley of questioning, cannot be fully trusted by the one holding it. Sometimes, the strongest faith is the one that admits its weakness and still chooses to stand. Are you hearing those loud whispers of doubt in the quiet? Are the questions swirling like a storm inside you? Bring your questions, your struggles, your honest, raw doubt before God. He can handle your doubt. He already knows it. He's not intimidated by your questions. He invites them. Remember the disciples in Luke 17, verse 5? Faced with a challenging command, they simply asked Jesus, "Increase our faith." It is okay, more than okay. It is human and faithful to admit your faith feels weak and to ask the one who gives faith to strengthen it. Lean into the Scriptures during this time. Saturate your heart and mind with the unchanging truth of His promises. Surround yourself with the voices and stories that point you back to who God is. And remember the impossible power Jesus assigned to even a tiny mustard seed of faith. It doesn't need to be mountain-sized. It just needs to be pointed at the mountain mover. Your faith, however small it feels right now, is enough for Him to work with. Let the wrestling lead you closer. You sit in the silence. The waiting room stretches out around you, vast and echoing with unmet expectation. You prayed for the door to open, for the answer to arrive like a rushing wind, but all you hear is the quiet hum of time passing, the slow, steady beat of your own heart wondering why. It feels utterly alone in this space. The absence of a visible breakthrough, the lack of a clear sign, begins to feel like the absence of God Himself. Because you don't feel Him working, don't see His hand moving mountains right here, right now, it's easy to conclude He simply isn't there. The stillness feels isolating, a void where your faith begins to question if it's even being heard in the heavens. But what if this waiting room, this season of pause, isn't an empty void at all? What if it is, in fact, a sacred space? A place where God meets you not in the dramatic upheaval you expected, but in a uniquely intimate, quiet way. His presence isn't always announced with thunder and lightning shaking the foundations. Sometimes it arrives as a quiet, persistent peace that settles deep within your soul. A peace that sustains you precisely through the uncertainty, not after it's resolved. Look back, if you can, to moments, perhaps small and easily overlooked in the intensity of your waiting, where you felt a gentle nudge in a direction you didn't plan, saw a subtle sign in the kindness of a stranger, or received unexpected strength, grace, or a perfectly timed word precisely when you needed it most. These weren't mere coincidences orchestrated by chance. They were divine fingerprints left on the window pane of your day, whispers of a love that hasn't left. The profound spiritual insight resting in the heart of the pause is this: God's presence isn't conditional on your circumstances changing or your prayers being answered according to your schedule. He is Emmanuel, God with us, not just in the victories and mountaintop moments, but in every season, especially the uncomfortable, stretching ones that feel like a wilderness walk. He is not pacing anxiously outside the waiting room door, wringing his hands about your situation. He is sitting with you in it. He is holding your hand, even when the silence is so loud you can't feel his touch, even when the darkness feels absolute. Are you mistaking the absence of a desired breakthrough for the actual absence of God Himself? This quiet season invites you to open your spiritual eyes, to look beyond the unopened door and see the subtle yet powerful ways He is sustaining you. He is providing just enough grace, just enough strength, just enough hope for today. He is revealing Himself in the stillness, not always through grand gestures, but often through the simple fact that you haven't collapsed under the weight, that breath is still in your lungs, that a flicker of faith still remains. Isaiah 43:2 offers not a promise of immediate deliverance from the trial, but a promise of presence through it. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. He doesn't promise you won't pass through, but that when you do, He will be with you. His presence in the pause is the promise. Allow that quiet truth to settle into the ache of your waiting heart. You sit in the stillness of your waiting, but your mind races like a storm-tossed sea. You tell yourself you're being patient, yet inside, a frantic energy churns. What if I miss the moment? The whispers insist. Should I have done something differently? How can I make this happen? The pressure is a physical weight settling heavy on your shoulders. You exhaust yourself trying to force stubborn doors open, manipulating situations with weary hands, conjuring up solutions from your own limited strength. Every should becomes a lash. Every moment of rest feels like failure. Guilt nips at your heels. Shouldn't you be hustling harder, praying longer, striving with every fiber of your being to move the mountain? But look closer. Striving and the divine art of waiting are not companions. They are often spiritual opposites, locked in quiet conflict. You are called not to frantic activity masked as patience, but to an active surrender that blooms into restful trust. This waiting isn't a passive resignation, a throwing up of hands in defeat. No, it is a deliberate, powerful choice to cease striving in your own strained power. It is choosing to rest in the bedrock certainty that God is ceaselessly working, weaving His purpose through the unseen moments, even when the tapestry is hidden from your sight. This is learning the art of spiritual rest, a conscious quieting of the anxious thoughts that clamor for control, a release of the suffocating need to dictate the outcome. It is finding a deep, abiding peace in the absolute, unshakable capability of His hands. Are you utterly exhausted? Running on empty from trying to force life's currents to bend to your will in this season of waiting? Perhaps, just perhaps, God isn't asking for more striving, but for a deeper, more radical place of rest in Him. Consider the ancient whisper from Psalm 37:7. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. Stillness isn't emptiness. It's the fertile ground where faith takes root. Patient waiting isn't idleness. It's a fierce discipline that frees you from the frantic energy of trying to outrun God's timing or engineer your own rescue. It is a paradox, finding your strongest position not in the fight, but in laying down your arms of self-sufficiency. Lay down the crushing burden of control you were never meant to carry. Practice, moment by moment, practicing resting in the profound, liberating truth that He is sovereign. He is actively working on your behalf, even in the quiet, unseen places where your striving yields only weariness. Rest is not the absence of action. It is the presence of trust. You sit in the silence, waiting for the mountain to move, for the sea to part, for the sky to open and declare your breakthrough. And while you wait, the world keeps turning, demanding your attention in a million tiny ways. The sink fills with dishes, emails pile up, relationships require nurturing, responsibilities call your name. These mundane details, these small, seemingly insignificant tasks, feel utterly pointless when your heart is fixed on the monumental thing that hasn't happened yet. Why bother with faithfulness in the small things, you wonder, when the big thing feels perpetually delayed? Why invest energy, presence, and diligence in routines and duties that seem to tread water while you yearn to leap forward? There is a temptation here, isn't there? To check out emotionally, to coast through the present because the future feels uncertain, stalled, or just out of reach. To neglect the daily bread God provides because you're focused on the future feast you crave. This internal negotiation, this quiet wrestling with the why of the small, is a common path in the wilderness of waiting. But here lies a profound spiritual insight, often hidden in plain sight. God frequently uses these very seasons of delay, these stretches of quiet waiting, not as punishment or pause, but as sacred ground to cultivate faithfulness in the small things. Think of the prophet Elisha, told to wash in the Jordan 7 times, a simple, small, even seemingly foolish act for a great healing. Or the disciples gathering leftover bread after feeding thousands, a small task after a massive miracle. Jesus Himself taught a powerful truth about this economy of faithfulness. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much, and whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. Luke 16:10. Your faithfulness in the waiting, in the seemingly insignificant moments, is not a holding pattern. It is active spiritual training ground. It's here, in the quiet choices to be present, to be diligent, to practice worship and service in obscurity, that character is built, discipline is strengthened, and your readiness for the greater responsibilities or blessings God has in store is proven. The seed of your destiny is watered by the quiet obedience in the small things today. Are you neglecting the present duties because you're fixated on the future promise? Does the vastness of what you long for make the smallness of what's in your hand feel trivial? Turn your attention gently now to the little things God has entrusted to you today. The simple acts of love, the quiet commitment to integrity, the consistent practice of prayer, even when it feels dry. How can you be faithful right where you are? Your present faithfulness is not a delay of your destiny. It's the essential, unskippable preparation for it. It is the slow, steady filling of the oil lamp while waiting for the bridegroom. Trust that God sees your quiet obedience, your diligence in the unseen, and is using it to shape you, refine you, and ready you for what lies ahead, transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary within you. The long pause stretches out. You check the clock, the calendar, your inbox, but the anticipated arrives not. It's not just the delay itself that chafes, but what the delay begins to whisper about you. If your worth feels linked to the job title that hasn't materialized, the relationship status that remains unchanged, the health breakthrough still hidden, then the waiting isn't just an inconvenience. It feels like a verdict. Am I not good enough? The old serpent hisses. Does God not see me? Or worse, does he see me and find me wanting? The silence of the heavens begins to sound like a judgment on your perceived failures or inadequacies. You feel overlooked, forgotten in the vast wilderness of delay, your sense of self eroding under the pressure of unmet expectation. But there is a spring in this dry land, a truth deeper than the parched earth of your circumstances. Your identity is not a fragile seedling dependent on the weather of external validation. Your identity is a deep root system anchored in the bedrock of Christ Jesus. You are not defined by what you're waiting for, nor by the length of the wait. You are defined by who you are in Him. Before the first star was hung, before the mountains were shaped, He chose you. Not based on your future performance, not because you would eventually earn it, but because of His lavish love. In Christ, you are more than just accepted. You are adopted. You are not merely tolerated. You are cherished. Ephesians 1:3-6 echoes this eternal reality. You have been blessed with every spiritual blessing, chosen in Him before time began, adopted as a beloved child through Jesus. Your forgiveness is sealed, your redemption paid, your value fixed, not by the outcome of your prayers, but by the finished work of the cross. You are deeply, irrevocably valued, simply because He calls you His own. This waiting season, as difficult as it is, holds a sacred invitation. It's an opportunity to let God tenderly strip away the false masks you've worn, the identity based on achievement or relationship status, or what the world says you are. It's a call to anchor yourself deeply and finally in the unchanging truth of who He says you are. Sometimes, the greatest gift in the wilderness is not the promised land arriving early, but the stripping away of everything that isn't essential, leaving only the true core identity in Christ. The very silence meant to highlight your perceived lack becomes the quiet space where you can finally hear the truth of your abundance in Him. Are you allowing the quiet pressure of waiting to erode the knowledge of your true worth? Are you letting the silence of God feel like a statement about your inadequacy? Stop. Breathe. Remind yourself, perhaps out loud, several times a day, I am a beloved child of God. My value is in Christ, not in my circumstances. He has chosen me. He has redeemed me. He calls me His. This anchoring isn't just a nice thought. It's spiritual warfare against the lies that waiting can amplify. Your destiny isn't tied to the delay. Your identity is secured in the eternal embrace of your Heavenly Father. The silence stretches, thick and heavy with unanswered questions. You sit there, tracing the lines on a metaphoric map of your life, and nothing connects. It feels disjointed, a series of dead ends and unexpected detours that make no logical sense from your vantage point. You see a path that abruptly stops before a wall, a door that refuses to open, a long, barren stretch that seems to lead nowhere. You feel like you're standing before a vast, complex blueprint, but you can only see a small corner, maybe just one room, or a single wall, or perhaps only the foundation being laid in dirt. It makes no sense in isolation. You can't understand the purpose of the odd angles, the seemingly unnecessary structural elements, the long, frustrating waiting periods. Why this delay? Why this unexpected turn? Why this closed door? Because you lack the perspective of the divine architect. This is the heart of the struggle, isn't it? Your life, especially the waiting seasons and confusing transitions, feels precisely like looking at just a small, baffling corner of God's intricate blueprint. You question the delays, the detours, the things that seem to make no sense from the limited ground floor you occupy. You look at the challenges and see flaws, setbacks, maybe even abandonment. But the architect sees the entire building, the finished masterpiece, and knows exactly why every single piece, every odd angle, every supporting beam hidden from view, every seemingly unnecessary structural element is absolutely necessary. He sees the final structure standing strong, functional, and breathtakingly beautiful, designed not just for utility, but for glory. The powerful spiritual insight here is this: God's plan for your life is infinitely more intricate and beautiful than you can comprehend from your limited vantage point. The waiting periods, the closed doors, the unexpected turns that feel like errors in the design, they are not mistakes at all. They are integral components, essential structural elements necessary for the finished building of your life to be strong, resilient, and beautiful, according to His grand vision. Trusting God's timing, trusting His direction, trusting His heart means trusting Him implicitly as the divine architect. It means acknowledging, even when your knees feel weak with doubt, that He sees the end from the beginning and that His design is perfect, even when the current stage feels messy, incomplete, or frustratingly unclear. Are you frustrated, perhaps even deeply anxious, by the parts of the blueprint you don't understand? By the walls that block your expected path? The long hallways of waiting? The rooms you desperately want to enter, but remain locked? Step back from trying to figure out every detail yourself. Release the burden of needing to see the entire structure from its earliest foundation. Trust the architect. Jeremiah 29:11 is a familiar comfort, a cornerstone promise. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. This promise isn't rooted in your ability to see the whole plan clearly or in your current circumstances making perfect sense. It is rooted entirely in the knowledge, the wisdom, and the unwavering character of the planner himself. He knows, he plans, he will bring it to completion. Peace is found not in seeing the entire blueprint, but in surrendering to the one who holds it all. You stand before it, not a tomb carved into rock, but your own personal stone. It could be a diagnosis that feels like a sealed fate, a financial crisis that has locked away all future possibilities, a relationship broken beyond repair that feels like the end of connection. You look at the weight of it, the sheer impossibility of moving it alone, and your spirit sinks. This isn't just a challenge. It feels final. It feels like the end of the story, the heavy conclusion to a season of hope that has now faded into silence. You sit in the silence, wondering if your prayer was even heard. The wind taps the window, like God's whisper waiting for your stillness in the face of this insurmountable obstacle. Think back to that Sabbath after the cross. Imagine the disciples, huddled perhaps in a hidden room, the world outside feeling alien and dangerous. Their hopes weren't just dashed, they were annihilated. The one they followed, the king they believed in, was gone. And a stone, a massive, heavy stone, was rolled against the entrance of a tomb. It wasn't just rock and mortar. It was a declaration of finality, a symbol sealing away their dreams, their future, everything they had lived for. They waited through that day. A Sabbath turned into a season of forced, agonizing stillness, wrapped in grief and confusion. Fear tapped at the window of their hiding place. Uncertainty was the air they breathed. It truly felt like the end of everything. Their desert season felt endless, their oil lamps flickering low in the darkness of despair. But the story didn't end there. It never does with God. Early on that Sunday morning, a different kind of seismic shift happened. Not the tearing of a veil, but the rolling away of a stone. It wasn't rolled away because Jesus was trapped and needed help to escape. No, he had already walked out in resurrection power. The stone was rolled away to reveal he was out, to show the world that the waiting was over, that the seeming end was merely the quiet, essential prelude to the most glorious breakthrough in history. Their time of agonizing uncertainty, their moments of fear and despair before that sealed tomb, paved the way for the most astounding demonstration of God's power the universe had ever witnessed. What looked like death was actually the doorway to ultimate life. This is where the divine truth pierces our present reality. God specializes in rolling away stones that look utterly insurmountable to us. The spiritual insight isn't just a historical fact, it's a living promise, a mustard seed of hope, planted in the dry soil of your struggle. Your waiting period, the season you find yourself in now, might feel exactly like standing before that sealed tomb, hopeless, final, with the weight of the world pressing against the entrance of your future. It feels like death has won, like the dream is buried forever. But God, the God who brought life from the ultimate death, specializes in bringing breakthrough from absolute impossibility. He is the one who can turn your deepest mourning into uncontainable dancing, not through your effort, but through his divine, unmatchable power. He isn't asking for your strength to move the stone, just your surrender to his. You might be asking the question those women asked that morning: who will roll away the stone from the entrance? Mark 16, verse 3. Who has the strength, the power, the means to move this thing that blocks my path, that seals my hope away? But the stunning reality they found was that the stone was already rolled away. It wasn't their doing. It was God's. He doesn't just help you move mountains. Sometimes he moves them entirely on your behalf, in his perfect, often surprising timing. Your inability is the stage for his omnipotence. Are you facing a stone today that feels too heavy, too final, too impossible to move? Does it stand between you and the life you hope for? Between you and breakthrough? Between you and peace? Remember the empty tomb. Remember the stone that was rolled away not by human hands, but by divine decree to reveal resurrected life. What looks like the absolute end to you, what feels like a sealed fate, might just be the very place where God is preparing to display his resurrection power in your life. He is able to move mountains, and yes, even the heaviest, most final-looking stones on your behalf. Your waiting is not the end. It's the quiet pause before his power is revealed. Trust him with the stone. Trust the one who conquered the grave itself. You sit in the thick quiet of the waiting. The silence stretches, a vast empty canvas where you expected clear strokes of divine direction. Around you, the world screams, the clamor of striving, the insistent drumbeat of comparison, the relentless hum of fear whispering worst-case scenarios. It's loud, this internal and external noise, so loud that it seems impossible to hear anything else. You've strained your ears, praying for a booming voice, a sign written in the sky, a sudden, undeniable instruction that tells you when this season will end, how the path forward will appear. But the heavens feel heavy, and the silence feels deafening. This is the heart of the struggle. We are wired to listen for the spectacular, the undeniable, the urgent. We expect God to shout over the noise, to cut through the chaos with thunderous clarity. And when he doesn't, we conclude he is absent, or worse, indifferent. We mistake his method for his silence. We are listening for the whirlwind, the earthquake, the fire, the powerful displays of might. We are tuning our spiritual ears to frequency 1000, while God is often broadcasting on frequency 1. But what if the waiting isn't just a passive holding period, but an active stripping away? What if the stillness, the absence of the expected noise, is designed to quiet the internal clamor? As you begin to surrender, not just your circumstances, but your expectations of how God should show up, as you choose to rest, not in the outcome, but in the process, as you lean into trusting the wisdom and timing of the potter, a different sound begins to emerge from the quiet. It's not the sound you were straining for. It's not a booming decree about the end date of your trial. It is a sound so gentle, so subtle, it can only be heard when everything else has hushed. It is a whisper. This whisper doesn't arrive with fanfare or flashing lights. It settles in the space left vacant by your surrendered striving. It is a gentle affirmation of truth that your own fear has tried to shout down. It's a quiet reminder of who he is, not a distant manager of outcomes, but a present, loving shepherd. It's a soft confirmation of your identity in Him, not defined by your current circumstances or perceived failures, but by His unwavering love and promises. It is an unexpected peace that doesn't explain the circumstances, but settles your anxious heart within them. This peace transcends understanding, a gentle paradox in the storm. You realize, perhaps with a sense of profound, quiet awe, that God wasn't silent at all. You were just listening for the wrong kind of sound, or perhaps the noise of your own fear, your impatience, your comparisons, your desperate need for control was simply too loud. The biblical insight rings true. God often speaks most clearly, not in the dramatic, but in the still, small voice. 1 Kings 19:11-12. After the wind, the earthquake, and the fire, Elijah found God not in those powerful displays, but in the sound that followed. Our waiting season, precisely because it strips away the usual distractions and forces us into a stillness we might otherwise avoid, can be a profound opportunity. It cultivates the spiritual sensitivity needed to hear His subtle guidance and feel His comforting presence in ways we couldn't in the busyness. Are you straining to hear God's voice in this waiting? Are you listening for the shout when He might be offering a whisper? The invitation now is to quiet the noise, the frantic thoughts, the anxious expectations, the external pressures. Tune your spiritual ear. Begin to listen not for the answer about the waiting, but for the confirmation in the waiting. Listen for the subtle ways He is communicating with you. Through His word that brings a flicker of hope or a fresh perspective. Through a quiet prompting in your spirit that nudges you towards surrender. Through the unexpected peace that settles in your chest despite the uncertainty outside. John 10:27 says, "My sheep listen to my voice. I know them, and they follow me." Your season of waiting, as challenging as it feels, is fundamentally an invitation to become more attuned to the shepherd's voice. It's a masterclass in discernment, learning to distinguish His gentle whisper from the loud, deceptive noise of the world and your own anxieties. It requires stillness you may not naturally possess, and trust that goes beyond seeing. It asks you to stop striving to make God speak the way you want Him to, and start listening for how He is already speaking in the quiet spaces you may have previously overlooked. The whisper is there, waiting for your stillness. You have journeyed through the silence, a landscape where questions echo in the empty spaces. You've walked the biblical paths of waiting, from the desert sands where Abraham clung to a star-sized promise, to the deep, lonely pit where Joseph wrestled with betrayal. Through the winding wilderness roads Israel traversed in uncertainty, all the way to the cold stillness of an empty tomb before the dawn broke forth. This journey wasn't just about marking time. It was about finding purpose within the pause. It was about allowing God to shape your character like clay on the potter's wheel, to root your faith deeper like a tree enduring the wind, to refine your spirit like gold purified by fire. You confronted the ache of comparison, the gnawing feeling that everyone else's story is moving forward while yours is stuck. You wrestled with the heavy cloak of doubt, wondering if God had forgotten, if His promises had an expiration date marked not for you. Yet, in those moments of struggle, you found comfort in His constant presence, a warmth that dispelled the chill of fear, and heard the quiet call to rest in His sovereignty, trusting that He holds all things in His hands, even the tangled threads of your life. Now, as this devotional journey through the wait concludes, you stand not necessarily at the finish line of your waiting period, but at a profoundly new beginning in how you perceive and navigate it. The goal wasn't merely to survive the waiting. It was to learn to trust God always within it. The message has been etched into your soul, perhaps faintly at first, but now with increasing clarity. God's timing is perfect, not because it aligns with your calendar, but because He is perfect. His delays are not denials of your heart's deepest longings, but divine orchestrations unfolding according to a plan far grander, more beautiful, and more redemptive than you can yet see from your limited vantage point. Remember this truth. Carry it like a lamp through the dim seasons. Your worth is not tied to your circumstances changing, to the promise arriving on your schedule, or to the validation you seek from the world. Your worth is immutably, eternally tied to your identity as His beloved child. You are seen, known, and cherished simply because you are His. His presence isn't dependent on your fleeting feelings, whether you feel strong or weak, hopeful or despondent. His presence is anchored in His unchanging promise to be with you always, a faithful companion walking every step of the way. The waiting is not wasted time, lost to the winds of delay. It is sacred time, precious moments woven intricately into the very fabric of your faith story by a loving, purposeful God who sees the end from the beginning. As you step back into the rhythm of your everyday life, carrying the weight of what is still unknown, what is still undone, remember the lessons learned in this quiet space. Remember the faithfulness of God displayed throughout history, echoed in the quiet corners and unexpected turns of your own life. The discomfort of the pause, the stretching you feel like a vine reaching for the sun, is not punishment. It is building a divine capacity within you to carry the weight and glory of the promise when it finally arrives. The stretching is increasing your ability to rely solely on Him, to discover that He truly is your strength, your shield, your exceeding great reward. The stillness, the moments where the world's noise fades, is teaching you to hear His voice above the clamor, a whisper of assurance in the storm. Even in the deepest silence, when answers seem absent, His presence sings over you, a melody of love, acceptance, and unwavering commitment. Continue to trust, even when the path is unclear. Continue to hope, for hope is the anchor of the soul, steady and sure. Continue to wait, not passively in resignation, but actively and faithfully, tending the garden of your soul, preparing the ground for what is to come. Your story is still being written, chapter by chapter, day by day, and the divine author holds the pen. He is good, He is faithful, and He is always, always on time, according to His perfect, beautiful plan. They didn't see the end, the promised land, the Messiah's arrival, the resurrection morning, but they trusted the author, and that was enough.